are the immediate needs of these young lives in the face of such an uncertain future? Joining us from Hitchin in the UK is James Denselow, the head of conflict and humanitarian teams at Save the Children. James, good to have you as always. So, we know just by looking at pictures that there is a much different situation right across the border from Turkey in Syria. So let's say a child has survived. There's no family. What are the resources available for that orphan child at the moment?
In Syria, well, it's a very different prospect to the situation in southern Turkey. And I think we're now more than ever aware of the sort of two-tiered nature of the response that's going on in the two countries. As your report suggested, a child living in northwest Syria may have lived or probably has lived their entire life in conflict conditions. Many of them have been displaced multiple times. They're not living in the kind of accommodation that they should be. They're not eating the kind of food that they should be. There's huge malnourishment issues in northwest Syria. They may have been affected by recent cholera outbreaks, and now this earthquake, and as you say, a scenario in which some children have lost relatives or lost entire families. Whereas in Turkey, the state is ultimately the guardian when families are unable to care for children. In northwestern Syria, that is not the case. And so we'd be looking at a series of different options, whether that's through local organizations, international NGOs, and of course, wider family networks that have been so important and so critically resilient for Syrians who've endured this conflict to date.
We do see aid reaching Syria. Of course, for our viewers watching, it's really difficult to know how much that alleviates and how many people are able to access that aid. So how would you characterize it for us? The number of people available to the victims to help them and the amount of aid that is there.
Well, we've seen drips of aid. You really need a flood of aid. 52 trucks, we've just heard from the American government representative by the end of Sunday. And bear in mind, this was a part of Syria that was already majoritively aid dependent. So these trucks would be going in at this number before this earthquake. So then to put on top of that the needs that have been caused by the earthquake, and we're talking about an entirely different set of issues. And so therefore the response is more dramatically incompatible with the need, essentially. I thought a statistic that really did live with me was the idea that only 5% of areas affected in Syria were able to get search and rescue teams to them, which shows you that we're going to really see huge numbers of killed coming out once the rubble has been cleared from those other 95% of areas affected in Syria. So there's a dramatic contrast between those numbers, the need, and the actual reality. The opening of these cross-border crossings is to be welcomed, I think, in the sense of being able to logistically move more resources across. And of course, the weather conditions that concern us to further outbreaks of disease and the sort of secondary emergencies that could emerge if we aren't moving quicker are what we're focusing on right now.
Since your organization focuses on the youngest of the victims, you see a large number of people in need of all kinds. They might be injured, they might be hungry. Where are the majority of these children being cared for right now? Is it hospitals and medical clinics, or is it in people's homes that have survived?
So if we imagine, first of all, that we've got 7 million children across both countries who've been affected by this earthquake, we almost have a sort of pyramid of need. Right at the top of the pyramid, we have the smallest numbers who have unfortunately died, but still talking about hundreds and maybe thousands of children. We haven't had that age breakdown yet. Then we've got the numbers of children who've been injured and the severity of that injury changing from those who've lost limbs or suffered life-changing injuries to those who need to have some kind of access to professional medical treatment. Then below that, you have children who have lost their homes and need shelter and food. And that number is obviously a lot larger than the top of the pyramid. And then beneath that, we need to think of those who maybe don't need shelter, don't need a medical assistance, but their day-to-day lives have been turned upside down. They need an education system to be restored. They need to think about the wider sort of ability to access electricity and clean water, etc. So it's a pyramid of need that covers 7 million people. If that was in the UK, that would be equivalent to a third of the entire child population of the UK suddenly needing help from sources they didn't previously get it from. So it's a huge, huge demand, and this is all just over a week in.
And you mentioned cholera already being something that was present there that people had been dealing with. Describe to us the risk of a further outbreak of disease, and is something being done now to try to prevent that?
Well, again, it goes back to those 52 trucks that have crossed so far. That number surely slightly higher, but are they carrying the equipment to be able to restore water and sanitation infrastructure to the level that would have prevented the previous cholera outbreak that we've seen in recent months in Syria? The fact that these border crossings have been open is welcome, but the fact that they've only been given a 3-month window, considering the scale of the need I've just described, is deeply concerning. And considering the level of pre-existing problems, I question how much 12 weeks worth of truck supplies, especially at the rate we're seeing now, can make a significant difference to people in northwest Syria. And it's no wonder that Syrian civil society are outraged at what the UN is admitting themselves is a failure to step up to the plate on this one so far.
All right, James Denselow, great to talk to you. Thanks so much.